So you were black and white technically then.
I am.
What has that been like? Was that kind of cool during like the BLM movement? Was there like, did you take that in ways that other people probably didn't take it? Or I don't even know how to ask some of these questions. I'm kind of fascinated by race a lot, right? It's interesting to me. I grew up in a poor black and white area.
Mm-hmm.
So
what city?
In Louisiana. I grew up in like a place called Covington, Louisiana.
Yeah.
Lee Harvey Oswald went to our middle school. That was like our big thing.
Oh, wow.
And
role model.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, some people think he did it, some people don't, but I don't know. Even if he did, he wasn't like a good husband, apparently. So I don't know. I think people had views about him around the area. It was just kind of a basic black and white town. So I was always real fascinated by race growing up, you know, and like what went on and what it was like and what it felt like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I guess I was kind of curious about.
Oh, so, well, I don't know. The difference is that my mom is West Indian, it's Jamaican, and which is pretty significant. So it's not, you know, West Indian first of all, being an immigrant as opposed to someone born here. And West Indian culture is very different from African American culture. So you feel it's a mixture of things. Like you feel like more of an immigrant than you feel like a racial minority.
Oh, interesting.
So my Jamaican cousins who live here will sometimes talk about black people, but they're not talking about themselves, even though they're black.
Right, they're talking about African Americans.
Talking about African Americans, who they consider to be, you know, a separate group. They're not the same. So there was a lot of that. And West Indians have been, you know, in this country, are relatively high status, done very well. Lots of professionals make a lot, you know, as a group, culture, the group has really succeeded. So we're kind of a little bit on the outside of now there is, you know, you get treated in some ways. You still see racism and bear the brunt of it, but it's a different reaction. It's more like, wait, what just happened? As opposed to, oh my God, that's happening again.
I see.
There's a big difference between those two reactions. You're not inheriting this kind of burden. You're encountering this burden for the first time. And you're
interesting.
You're like, that's strange.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not used to that. Right.
Yeah, because I have friends from like Nigeria and stuff.
Oh yeah, they have the same. It's very similar. Yeah.
Right, and they'll talk about like a lot of times how their experience is so different than like a black person from America's experience.
Yeah.
But some cross patterns because they also have black skin. I think a lot about what BLM was, like the Black Lives Matter, what that movement and all, what it was like for society, you know, and what effects it had on it, and what I don't know. I think about that sometimes, you know, or if we're still figuring it out, you know.
Yeah.
I think about like what my own perceptions were during it, what was going on. You know, a lot of times I think for one, I didn't know black people were as angry. You know, I think that's something that I think like, oh, I didn't know that there was so much anger in the black community, you know, about, you know, fear of police and stuff like that, or just overall.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see how there could be if you look back through history, you know, especially in America. I wonder if black people have always viewed society, like in America, as like white society. I'd never thought about that before, you know, because to me, society, I'd never thought about it as white society. You know, I've just thought about it as like, this is the best way of practices that things work that keep us all kind of being able to stay alive and move forward.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing a book about policing, about the LAPD, and among other things, and a lot of it is about what the LAPD was like in the 40s and 50s, and to your point, its relationship to the black community to South Central, to the black community of Los Angeles, and it really helps to put something like the George Floyd incident in perspective, or the Sandra Bland incident in perspective, which you realize that this has been going on for generations. So when you see the anger of, you know, African Americans over the George Floyd killing, what you're seeing is a response not just George Floyd. It's the culmination of their parents saw something like that happen when they were growing up,
Yeah.
and their grandparents saw many things like that happen when, and their great-grand, it's been going on for so long that what you're seeing is kind of frustration as well as anger. It's this built up, it's not just, I can't believe this just happened. It's, I can't believe this is still happening.
Right.
Right. And that's I can't believe this is still happening is a much more rooted, powerful, bitter reaction than I can't believe this just happened. A one-off is something that goes away, or, wow, right? This isn't about a one-off.
Right. The way that looked, everything about it. Yeah, because your DNA too, I believe this stores pain from past lives, past things, right? Like I equate it sometimes like I have a lot of black friends that are fast, right? They're physically fast, right? And sometimes I think, well, if you had like grandparents, if you had 4 generations of your family that couldn't even run, that couldn't run if they wanted to, right? Like if you told them to run, they couldn't fit. They couldn't run. The first generation you get that can run is gonna fucking fly, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like they have 4 generations of wanting to run. This is a hypothesis in my head, right? That in their DNA, in their cells that have wanted to go, and now they get to go. They're gonna be beyond the speeds that you can't really fathom, right? So I think it's that we can store things inside of us, right? So that's why I think I understand what you're saying when you say that. It's like, yeah, this is just, it was a trigger for like a gunpowder that's kind of been built up in the system for a long time.
Yeah.
So I understand that sort of thing. I think it made me think too, like, yeah, I wonder if black people sometimes think that society is like not their society. Does that make any sense, you think? Like if they've ever, because like I don't look at society and think like, oh, this is a white society. I think this is just society and this is how it works.
Yeah.
But kind of like how you say in the book and some of the chapters, like that different expressions and things mean different things in different places. Like I think there's like in one of the first few chapters you talk about, they show pictures of men and women in the way that their facial expressions and how they, in one place, they're in American society, they're really easy. People get them exactly right. What these expressions mean: happy, sad, confused. But they show them to like a group of island people and they have no idea. They're not bad, but they're not, it's all over the place. And for some of the expressions, you don't even have an answer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place. I think I'm just trying to think like how different, I guess, we can be, you know, and maybe we don't realize or like.
Well, I was just trying to, in that part of the book, I'm trying to explain the kind of how culturally specific a lot of facial expressions or things are, and that unless you understand those kinds of like for some people in some cultures, if someone is looking away and won't look at you in the eye when they're talking, that's taken as a sign of that they're lying or they're being evasive. In other cultures, looking away and when you're speaking to you is a sign of respect. Like, I'm subservient. I respect, you're an elder. I'm not going to challenge you by looking you in the eye. And like that's one very simple example, but it's part of why the job of understanding a stranger is as hard as it is, because, we might bring a set of assumptions about behavior or facial expressions to a conversation, and though they don't work, we're dealing with somebody who has a different set of reference points. So that's really what I was getting at, is that we underestimate the kind of complexity of human responses. There's so much of this, like when people say that in a criminal trial, so-and-so didn't show any remorse. Well, what does remorse look like? Like, I don't know. I don't know what remorse looks like. I know how I think I know how I might look if I was feeling remorseful, but you can't even see your own face when you have that, unless you're walking around with a mirror in front of you.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm doing. A lot of times when I'm angry, I don't look angry. I keep it in. Or a lot of times when I'm happy, I'm not smiling. Or like you could go on and on. So it's like you realize we make so many mistakes by kind of jumping to conclusions based on people's facial expressions. And that's one of the sources of confusion that I write about in that book.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's just a lot of things like you're like, oh, I never really thought about that. I never really thought about that. Some cultures too, like, and especially like in America, there's a lot of like black and white tension, right? And I don't even know if it's better now. Do you think it's gotten better over your lifetime? Do you feel like?
Yeah, I think it has.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people doing this book on 1940s LA, 1930s LA, is a really good reminder of just how bad things were. I mean, we have a long way to go, but it's not 1948 anymore.
Yeah.
Up until the end of the 1940s in Los Angeles, in over 80% of the city, if you were black, you could not buy a house in a white neighborhood.
Wow.
Like there was written in the deed of the house. It said this house cannot be sold to a member of the, African American, they didn't use that phrase, race, right? Like, are you kidding me? That is so much worse. It's why everyone lived where they lived in LA. Why did the black people of LA live in South Central? They couldn't live anywhere.
Live anywhere else.
Not that they didn't want to, or not that people would mean to them. Legally couldn't live there because the deed of if they wanted to buy a house, and if you tried to buy a house, they would take you to court and you'd have to sell it.
Yeah. Wow.
Like things are better now.
Right? Yeah. Things are better, certainly like in the framework, right?
Yeah.
In like the roots that we have in society, or like the new, like, like the laws, and like it's definitely, that's better for sure. I think during like Black Lives Matter, I always felt like we were all kind of on the same page. And then I felt like there was this energy that like black people wanted their own society almost in a way, or they don't feel like sometimes I just wonder, like, can cultures really figure it out over time, or will there always be some things, since you're from different races and ethnicities, that you just can't really grasp, like, are there some like clues and like communication modes, or am I making any sense kind of?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I guess I would say I'm a little optimistic over the long term about these kinds of things.
Well, I think we're all going to be beige in 4 generations, all right? I believe that, right? Like, I'm a beige power advocate, Like, in 4 generations, it's going to be crazy to have even that we would all think about race, right? But so I just think about it in the time being and what it like feels like, Hope you enjoyed that video, and you can watch another, and you can watch this one, you can watch this one. Different options, different choices. Some guy just brings you one option, not this guy. 2 options. Watch one, this one or this one.